Our last and final presenter is going to be Madeline Flores. Our advisor is Dr. Christopher Burnett. She's going to talk to us today about oxidative reactivity of ascorbic acid serum and UV absorption activity of avobenzone and oxypyrilene and their activity together. Hi y'all, thank you for being here and for staying for the last presentation. I really appreciate it. My name is Madeline Flores, like she said, and today I will be presenting on my research on the oxidative reactivity of ascorbic acid serums and the UV absorption activity of avobenzone and oxypyrilene and their activity together. So, some of you might be asking yourselves, what is ascorbic acid and what are avobenzone and oxypyrilene? So, ascorbic acid is just the official chemical name for vitamin C, so it's this structure here. And then avobenzone and oxypyrilene are key components of chemical sunscreens that work to protect our skin from UV damage and radiation by absorbing the UV radiation from the sun. And so they're able to absorb this UV radiation because they have a structural component known as a chromophore, which are these rings on the structures, and so they absorb that UV radiation and kind of disperse it for us. And so the history of vitamin C and sunscreen being used together is actually kind of recent. This combo has not been super promoted until recently, around the 2019-2020 time period. Its popularity really rose with the rise of social media, particularly TikTok, during 2020, during quarantine, when everyone was home and had nothing better to do but make videos of themselves, like doing their skincare routine and being like, oh, I use this product and it's really good for this, or I use this product and it's really good for this. So a lot of influencers were going on this app and promoting vitamin C and sunscreen together because they were like, oh, look, like there have been studies done on this that prove that they work well together and they're going to protect your skin really well. And so the past studies being performed by dermatologists and scientists were kind of recent as well, mostly like the 2018-2019 time period. So like this research is very new, which is kind of exciting. And so why would we study vitamin C and sunscreen? So vitamin C is known as a non-enzymatic antioxidant, which is a substance that interrupts the free radical chain reactions by donating an electron to stabilize the free radical. And so this radical stabilization is oxidizing vitamin C. And so this oxidation is what's protecting our skin. And these free radicals are bad for you because they can be damaging and cause like a series of chain reactions that could result in alterations of your DNA, which is not good. And so vitamin C is used topically to like keep that from happening, basically. And so, by show of hands, how many of you wake up every single morning and put on sunscreen before you leave the house? Well, that's not so good. Shame on all of you. You should be wearing sunscreen every single day before you walk out the house. Because sunscreen protects our skin from UV radiation, as hopefully all of you know. And so it protects against both UVA and UVB radiation, which both come from the sun and are very harmful to our skin. And the main damage that they cause is skin cancer. So I'm sure many of you know someone who has had skin cancer and had to get it like cut out and stuff. I know my dad had skin cancer, not major, just like little. And I yelled at him. I was like, "Where are your sunscreen?" And so finally he texted me recently and he was like, oh yeah, I finally like started wearing sunscreen every single day. And I was like, finally? I was like, you're the one that used to preach wearing sunscreen. So well, that was ironic. And so vitamin C and sunscreen in combination just give a greater overall protection of your skin essentially. And so it's protecting you against the free radical oxidation and like that will like possibly damaging your DNA. And then the sunscreen works to protect from UV radiation. So there hasn't been much on like them together and like if they interact with each other, but there's a lot of proof showing that like you should wear both to protect against both of these things. And so my main research question that I was trying to answer was how do vitamin C serum and sunscreen work together to help protect your skin from radiation and sun damage? And so first, I think it's important to kind of look at the mechanism because that's where this chemistry starts. So this is the oxidation of vitamin C, and so this is ascorbic acid in its like normalcy, I guess you would call it. And so first, it has two pathways, as you can see. So it has this tall pathway, and then it has this body pathway. and then it can either lose an electron or lose another proton. And then after it loses the electron, it will go and lose another proton, and then lose an electron and become dehydrosorbate, or after it loses the second proton, it will lose the 2 electrons and become dehydrosorbate. Now, we don't really know which pathway is happening, we just know that one of these pathways is happening, and that's all that really matters, in my opinion. And so then next, we have the UV absorption schematic of iobenzone. And so it starts in its enol form, which just means that it has a hydroxyl group, which in this case, the hydroxyl group is kind of like the hydrogen is sharing with both oxygens, but typically a hydroxyl group is just an oxygen with hydrogen, not necessarily in this like water type looking scenario. And then when the molecule gets exposed to radiation, it photoisomerizes into its keto form, which as you can see here is denoted by these 2 double bonded oxygens at the top. So it loses that proton. And then when these 2 photoisomers absorb, they're absorbing at 2 different regions in the UV spectrum. And so that's kind of how we can tell that our experiments are working and that like this is actually absorbing the UV radiation. And so next we have the UV absorption mechanism schematic for octocrylene, the other key component in sunscreen. And so this, when it absorbs UV radiation, it starts out as octocrylene, and then after being exposed, it starts to degrade and actually becomes new molecules. And one of the major products is ethyl 2-cyano-3,3-diphenylacrylate. So basically, just this portion is getting like chopped off and it's degraded. So as for my methods, to test my hypothesis, I performed a series of UV-based spectrometry experiments. And in these experiments, I first started with standard solutions of all my chemicals, so vitamin C standard, enablebenzo standard, and octocrylene standard, and I made 0.004 solutions of those. And then, so that I could have like a baseline for like all my studies. And then after that, I looked at the actual skincare products. So I looked at the Bliss Bright Idea Vitamin C Serum, the Sweet Chef Ginger Vitamin C Serum Shot, as well as the Sunbum with sunscreen. And so essentially for my experiments, I just made like 2 sets of everything, I guess is the best way to say it. And so I had like 1 set of all the vitamin C components. I had 2 of each one that I brought into the glove box, which is a completely anaerobic environment in our lab. It's essentially like an enclosed fume hood that pumps nitrogen gas into the box. And you have to like cycle all of your materials in so that you're not bringing oxygen or water into the environment. And I kind of use that as like my control to see that nothing's going on. And then the other set I brought outside and put it in the sun for 30 minutes and let it sit for a little while. And then, so I did that with everything. So I did that with the iobenzone, I did that with octocrylene, I did that with the sunscreen, I did that with the vitamin C serums. And then, after I did all that, I took UV scans of all of them to compare like how they were like, if there were anything was actually happening, essentially, I guess you could say. Like, I was testing to see where they absorb and how much, if that absorption would go down after being exposed to UV radiation. And then, after I did all my initial studies with just the vitamin C products and the sunscreen and its components by itself, I combined them all. So I did a set of iobenzone with all 3 vitamin C, so the standard and the 2 serums, and then I did the octocrylene with the standard and the 2 serums. And I also did the sunscreen with the standard and the 2 serums, and then took UV scans of everything again. And so this is my vitamin C initial results. They're kind of messy, so and kind of crazy, and there's a lot going on, so I'll do my best to kind of set this through these. So I think it's best to start with vitamin C standard solution. So the dark orange, the 2 orange lines correspond to the standard solution, and the dark orange is my blood box, so no vitamins on it. And then the light orange is the one that was put in the sun. Now, I was not expecting these results. I was kind of expecting the dark orange to actually be higher than the light orange, which is not what we see here. Because normally vitamin C absorbs at around 250-260 wavelength nanometers, and that is the opposite of what happened So it's kind of confusing and kind of weird. And then the green lines correspond to the Bliss theorem, which also did a similar thing to the standard solution, which I was a little confused about as well, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And it's very noisy up here for the Bliss because this has a lot of added ingredients in it. It's not just straight line and see that you're putting on your skin. There's a lot of glycerol and water and other additives that help like keep it together, I guess you could say. And so it's very noisy, which makes it kind of hard to discern anything. And then the blue lines are the switch. So the dark blue is the box, and then the light is the sun again. And this actually did what I was expecting it to do. Like it absorbed normally for the unoxidized one, and then the peak diminished for the oxidized one, which I thought is normal. And then for my sensory results, once again, kind of interesting, kind of crazy. The red at the top is the actual sunscreen, the subtone. And the spectrum has a lot of oscillating crazy peaks in it because the sunscreen has titanium dioxide and iron oxides in it, which give it a shimmery glowing effect, which when put in the UV spectrophotometer could cause a scattering of light and like be what's creating all these crazy lines everywhere. So it kind of didn't really help with any of the results because there's so much noise because of the scattering of light. But thankfully the ibobenzone and the octocrylene gave much better results because it's just the ibobenzone and octocrylene solution, so it's kind of easier to see rather than with all the active ingredients. So the ibobenzone are these purple lines, and ibobenzone has a known absorbance in like the 350 to 360 range. And so I was expecting to see this peak right here, dark purple, like the 350 to 360-ish area, because this is the ibobenzone before it's been exposed to UV radiation. And then this decrease in that peak, I was expecting, because when it gets irradiated, that peak should diminish because a new peak is forming because you're getting a photoisomer. So that was exciting, I get it. And then when I looked at the octocrylene experiments, they also flow similar tail, which I was very happy because this dark green is higher than the light green because a new product is getting formed when it gets degraded. So you would expect to see like the peak decrease as it's getting exposed to UV radiation. And then starting with my results that are kind of combining everything, this is the ibobenzone schematic, which is interesting because when vitamin C standard was mixed with the ibobenzone, it just would obviously explain what it would do. Like the unoxidized and before UV radiation is higher in absorbance than the one that was oxidized and exposed to UV radiation. So I thought that was kind of peculiar and interesting. I'm not sure if it had anything to do with it being mixed with ibobenzone and not causing the difference, but I think further experiments would be fun to test and make sure that the vitamin C stuff originally was not food. And so, but it continues to tell the same story of the oxidized and the non-UV exposed is higher and has a higher absorbance than the oxidized and exposed for all of the vitamin C serums and the standard itself. And then for the octocrylene results, again, it's pretty much doing the same thing. Like I feel like everything just kind of built on itself and was like, okay, we're going to tell the same story. Except for the switch shift. It's kind of weird that this one decided to not have a vitamin C absorbance. Like normally vitamin C should absorb in the 260, 250 region, and you kind of see like a decrease in the peaks, and the oxidized one is the one that has a higher peak than the unoxidized, which is unusual and confusing. So once again, I feel like further studies could be done to look at the octocrylene reaction to the vitamin C. Like these were very preliminary and initial studies, kind of just trying to gauge if these things are working together. And so there's a lot of weird discrepancies in the data, but overall, like when you look at the bliss, it's showing that 250 peak, which is what you would expect to see with the vitamin C, but it's not really showing anything in the CC region. And then when we look at our sunscreen results with the vitamin C, they're very inconclusive and hard to read, again, because the sunscreen has titanium dioxide, and iron oxides in it, which scatter the light within the research photometer, so you can't really tell anything from these results because the graph is just everywhere. It's so oscillating and crazy, like there's no real distinction between what is what. And so I definitely think doing further studies where we purify the sunscreen before putting it like into the experiments would definitely help in getting like the shimmery stuff out. To kind of keep that from disrupting the UV scans would be helpful. Because this, you can't tell anything from it. You can see like it just looks like a mess. So in conclusion, overall, my results do support the hypothesis that vitamin C is getting oxidized and protected against free radicals, and the sunscreen, like the key ingredients, avobenzone and lactopyrrolane, are working to absorb the UV radiation and keeping yourself from getting damaged. But as for if they work well together, it's kind of unclear. There was no particular pattern to look at, and like specific connection. So I definitely would love to do further work on this and kind of look at if there is an exact connection between the two, because that would be really fun to actually finally see that, like, oh, like, this means this. And so lastly, my experiments with the sunlight sunscreen specifically, they look like the spectrum looks super noisy and we're kind of inconclusive. So I think further research again would be helpful, especially with the purification process put in place to keep the things that are creating noise out. And so I would just like to thank Chris Burnett for coming along on this journey with me and helping me throughout this project. It's been an interesting one. And I would like to give a huge thanks to my large support system of family, friends, and other faculty for being there for me and helping me through this experience. And thank you to all of you for staying and listening to me ramble on about science. Presentation, any questions?
So obviously it's protecting us against free radicals, you said?
Yes.
And so does it only protect, like, so you're talking about UV radiation, right? And the other two are absorbing UV radiation?
Yeah.
How is UV radiation creating free radicals at the vitamin C?
It's not necessarily the UV radiation creating free radicals, it's more there are free radicals like in the air, like from pollutants and stuff like that. Like there are these things called ROSs, which are reactive oxygen species, and those are the free radicals that are affecting us, and those are just coming from the environment that you're in.
So then how does that relate to the UV vis and the two working together if they're working on two different things, like protecting our skin from two different things?
That is what I was trying to figure out, which was very hard, and I don't really know how they were connected. And I think definitely if we had more time and there were more previous experiments on this, it would be a lot easier to kind of come up with a connection and like look for ways to find a connection. But since it's such new research and a new topic to kind of study and discuss, and like skincare, no one really knows anything about skincare. Everyone just does what they want to do, and like people say what they want to say is good for you. So it's kind of hard to put two and two together.
I was going to ask, I'm assuming you did just put sunscreen in the cuvette and added it to the cuvette, so what did you do that delivery?
No, okay,
And why?
so the solubility, that was a fun issue. So the sunscreen, I diluted in 3 milliliters of water and then added 2 milliliters of reagent alcohol, which is just ethanol mixed with isopropyl alcohol to keep it denatured so people don't drink it. And so I did that because the octocrylene and the avobenzone are very strong organic molecules, as you can see, lots of carbon, lots of rings. And so they wouldn't dissolve in just the water, but the sunscreen and the stuff you're putting on your skin would pretty much only dissolve in the water. So I had to find a way to be able to look at them on the same playing field, because if you're looking at stuff on the UV vis in different solutions, like the absorbance is going to be different. And so I had to figure out a way to kind of put those together. So then I was like, well, what if I dissolve this in the water and then add to alcohol because they're miscible, and then do the opposite, or they then send them out private because their body will let alcohol first and then add the water, and it will be fine. So that's what I did. Which didn't fully dissolve. It's kind of again, like you can see, like it was gross. I'm not gonna serve it.
I think you should put that graph up as art somewhere. That's one comment I would have to say. So, are there sunscreens that just don't have the titanium?
Yes, there are. I think doing studies with sunscreens that don't have shimmering effects in them would also be helpful. I probably should have thought about that before starting this research. But that didn't come up until after I got my results, so by then it was too late.
You said you would purify the sunscreen. What would you purify it down to? You would just purify it down to the two molecules?
I would try to get it down pure, but I don't know if that's possible just because there are so many added ingredients in it that like try to keep it all together, you know what I'm saying? So,
What about using, oh, sorry.
oh, it's okay.
I was going to say the QR code that you use for your barcode consultation today to find a product that didn't have a lot of additives.
Yeah.
What are the additives like, I guess, in terms of the point of the whole research is kind of to see, like, how the sunscreen, like, sure, what are the additives in the sunscreen itself, like, be useful? Like, sometimes they help preserve it so it don't spoil when you get it home and stuff. So, does that take away from that fact that, would is it down to like any sunscreen would pretty much like unless you get such a spoil within the day that it's kind of useless to get like a sunscreen that has these particular sort of ingredients to keep on shelf life, or like I don't know if I'm like saying that correctly, but like
Yes, I get what you're saying. I really don't think it would have that big of an impact. I feel like the additive ingredients are in there to like keep it preserved, like you said, and they're not really playing a role in like the UV absorption and keep protecting your skin. So like it wouldn't really matter that much because there are a ton of sunscreens that don't have shimmer in them. Like that's super common because like most guys don't want to wear shimmer on their face. Like I know that's a stereotype, but like you know, so like the shimmer is optional, and like the other preservatives are also optional. I'm sure there are tons of companies that like try to make sunscreen that's less preservative heavy and more natural and better for the environment and probably better for you. But as an overall, I don't think it really has an impact.
Thank you again.
Yes, absolutely. I've had an opportunity to have Madeline in several classes. I think it's either been, for sure it's 2, possibly 3+ labs. And she was in the group where we did analytical chemistry lab online. So, yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, you were too. And that's a little bit ridiculous, but you know, she's a great student. She was, you know, always at the top of the class, very good in lab. And the funny thing about this is that, like, you know, most of you guys know me or a little bit about me, but my role here in St. Edwards is I'm like a lecturer. I do labs. I don't do research. And so Madeline, this is kind of like a testament to the type of person that she is. She had like a genuine curiosity about this subject. Like she literally just wanted to understand more about this. This was her question, and she wanted to figure it out. And she's very humble, and she's very persistent because this was not an easy task. What she accomplished here was actually very good, but she's only showing like the tip of the iceberg of what she did. But the point is that I believe over the summer, she had this burning desire to kind of understand this. And she actually she contacted me and she's sort of like, hey, what do you think about if you and I work together and maybe I could, you know, work in the lab and, you know, work on this honors thesis and all this stuff. So well, I don't do research. It's like, well, yeah, I understand, but maybe, maybe we could just work something out. And I was like, well, yes, of course, then let's go ahead and do it. And so, unlike some of the other presenters today, there was no procedures, there was no protocols, there was no, anything. Every single thing that she did, she had to bootstrap it herself. So she figured it all out. And a lot of the stuff that she did, she didn't even show. She worked for hours and hours on HPLC work, which was the original kind of thing. She broke into HPLC and did a great job with that. She also did purifications. Some of you remember how to do like the little SPE cartridges and how fun those are. And she did some work like that as well. And that didn't include here. But her persistence is really, like, I'm very impressed. I'm genuinely impressed. There were moments that were very difficult. She alluded to the solubility issues, which is the classic chemistry thing that you will run into, is that you want to do something, but boy, that sucker just won't dissolve. And you got to figure out a plan B and sometimes a plan C.
Yeah.
So, like, really, she exemplifies, like I said, like she just had a want of knowledge. She wanted to figure this out, and she, accomplished a lot. You got a lot closer.
Yeah.
And I know that this is something that, she has career aspirations to work in this field. I think that's good. I think she's thinking about taking some time off, and for some reason, Disney or something like that. I don't know.
I have no
But-
plans yet, so.
I really hope that you will get back into research, because I think you have a knack for it. You've got the academic skills and the perseverance. I think it's just, as you can see, that's what it's going to take to do actual research. So it's actually been my pleasure to work with you on this. So thank you. Yes. All right. Well, congratulations. You have earned this. You did a great job.